Well, hello there. This is going to be an interesting post for me, but I'm going to just throw it out there if it helps somebody. Anyways, about I think 9 days ago now, a well-known pastor in the Independent Baptist movement was caught and prosecuted for what news sources are calling aggravated sexual battery of a minor family member. There are some details about what happened, but I haven't actively searched this out. What I do know is that he was let out of jail for $200,000 bail. He went to a nearby hospital and he shot himself twice in the chest. And when something like this happens, especially as a children's pastor, it's my knee jerk reaction to be angry. I mean, I am. I'm angry. I don't think anger is always a sin. The Bible says be angry and sin not. So I'm angry when I hear this stuff. I hate that the smallest and most vulnerable people in our society succumb to abuse of this nature, and it shouldn't happen, but it does. And I wish that this man would have had to face the consequences for his actions, but instead, some might argue that he took the easy way out. I'm not going to sit here and defend a man who hurt a child, right? I have three daughters. Um, so, and I'm not going to personalize this. The question that I ask myself, though, is how do we stop this, right? I'm no stranger to hurt. Those who know me best know this. And one of the patterns that I've tried to practice over the years for people that have hurt me is to just simply pray for them, right? The Matthew 18 principle. Go to them and then and speak to them. Try to get it settled. Pray and ask forgiveness, or praying and forgive them and leave it to God, right? So to me, if a person hurts me, or if the person that hurt me gets a hold of God in a real and authentic way, then they won't ever hurt anybody like they hurt me again. Um, that does not stop the hurt from happening. And that's how I deal with people hurting me. But what do we do when, you know, how do we stop it? How do we stop people from hurting us? I don't know if we ever will, but, you know, I don't think we're ever going to stop hurts from happening on this side of glory. But I think that we as Christians, we need to get to the point where we can help each other connect to Christ in a meaningful way. Let's be honest. We need to help others get to a point where they can help others find healing from the wounds that led them down the path that they took. For instance, this pastor, and I guess another pastor recently has done something else. I'm not quite sure what it was, but it doesn't matter what it was. What happens is I don't believe that a person that is filled with the Spirit of God, that is walking in the Spirit, in a deep and meaningful and abiding relationship with the Lord, does these things, right? Where do evils and adulteries and where do they come from? They come from our heart. What does James tell us? It tells us every man is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. And when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. And so I think all of us, we have in us the capacity to do great evil. And we see great evil in the world. But is there a way to connect to Christ in such a way that we've been healed and we are growing with him to a point where we avoid this evil altogether? And I'm not talking about perfection. I don't think that's possible. Not until we get to heaven. I think most people have experienced inner and emotional spiritual damage during their lives, right? But the problem is that I don't see us attempting to deal with these problems in our churches. This is where this is just what I feel like I see. And I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in this. And many of you, you're listening to this and you think, yeah, I see that too. If churches are hospitals, where is the healing occurring, right? We've become legalistic, breeding grounds for more and more emotional damage. And we preach from our pulpits that if people would simply listen to the preaching, all of their problems would be solved. All of the all the while the enemy's feeding on the garbage inside our souls that we're afraid to get help with. We've got strongholds behind our walls, and when we tell each other, well, you need to make no provision for the flesh, but the enemy's behind the walls, and we're building our walls higher and higher and higher and higher, and the enemy's behind our walls. This man's sin did not start when he hurt that child. This man's sin began when he struggled with lust as a pastor and never got the help that he needed. And my guess is that he was so wrapped up in guilt and shame and narcissism or pride that he figured he could handle it until it was too late and until he couldn't. And I think had this man gotten a hold of God in a real and authentic way, that child wouldn't be hurt, and that man wouldn't be dead. His sin affects the life of at least one young person in a real and direct way. His sin affects churches all across America. His sins affect those people not willing to talk about it because they are afraid. Doesn't God's word teach us God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind? No, I'm sure that there could be a bigger conversation that could be had about this man and his associations amongst other things, but let's be perfectly clear, and I believe this. When a man has an authentic relationship with Christ, his mindset is love God, love others. He has a deep desire to be close to the Savior, and he has a deep desire to help others. I read this in a psychology book. It said that there's 3 things that a person needs to grow with somebody. They need to be with somebody who's trustworthy and real. They need to be with somebody who deeply understands them. And they need to be with somebody who accepts them unconditionally. I think in our churches, what we've done is we have not given a place where we can be trustworthy. We've not given a place where we can be authentic and real. And we definitely have not been, we're not giving a place for people to feel unconditionally accepted. I think that's a problem. So, friend, if you're hearing this today and you're in the depths of a struggle in your mind, don't wait to get help. Get help. Don't wait until it's too late. Get help. And if you're surrounded by people that would ostracize you because you're struggling with something that in it's staggering, 80 it's statistically, and I think this is a Barna study, he said over 80% of men in churches are looking at pornography. This is not something that just 4 or 5 people, this is something that men are struggling with all over the place. If you're surrounded by people that would ostracize you because you're struggling with lust, maybe you need to ask yourself if those people are your friends. Get the help you need. Lust is a, lust is a sin, and statistically, most men are actively struggling with it. And so let's talk about pastors, though, right? Most pastors, 50, and youth pastors admit that they have struggled with porn, either currently or in the past. Over over 20 overall 21% of youth pastors and 14% of pastors admit that they are currently struggling with using porn. About 12% of youth pastors and 5% of pastors say that they are addicted to porn. 87% of pastors who use porn feel a great sense of shame about it. 55% of pastors who use porn say they live in constant fear of being discovered. The vast majority of faith leaders who struggle with porn say this has significantly affected their ministry in a negative manner. As it will. It's not clear why, but youth pastors are twice as likely as pastors to report this kind of unfavorable impact. There's a big difference of opinion between faith leaders and congregants when it comes to the consequences for pastors who struggle with porn. Only 8% of pastors think that a pastor should resign his or her position if he is or she is struggling with porn. Most pastors think that they should deal with the struggle through counseling or accountability. And in contrast, 41% of adult Christians think that pastors should be fired or asked to resign if they're found to be using porn. Younger Christians are more likely to take a grace-filled approach. Either way, that's no place for a pastor to be. You are not leading your people spiritually, pastor, if you are struggling with pornography. You are not leading your people in the direction that you need to go if you're struggling with lust. And that's not a condemnation. It's just facts. The vast majority of the faith community, including leaders and laity, believe pornography is a bigger problem in the church than it was 2 decades ago, but many do not know what to do about it. 93% of pastors and 94% of youth pastors say it is a much bigger or somewhat bigger problem than it was in the past. More than half of youth pastors have had at least one teen come to them for help in dealing with porn in the last 12 months. Although teens seeking help are mainly teen boys, there's still a significant amount of teen girls seeking help from youth pastors. I'm taking all of this from a Barna study, by the way. Men of all ages, stages, but especially married men are coming to pastors for help with pornography struggles. Despite the awareness of the problem, most churches do not have problems specifically designed to help or assist those struggling with porn use. Wow. If a person does something illegal, they need to be reported. But if a person struggles with the sin and they struggle with deep emotional wounds, they need Jesus. And Christians, we should never we should never excuse illegal activity. But what happens if we are struggling with the sin of lust? Where do we go? Where do Christians go? And that's what I want to put on here today, is that if you are struggling with this sin, whether you're a pastor or a layman, I have some resources that can help you fight this spiritual battle and overcome this. This is not a sales pitch. What this is a cry to men and women to figure it out and stop being idle about their struggle. And if that's you, you can personal message me. You can let me pray with you, or I can point you in the right direction. But this is a struggle that most men face, and you need to deal with it. And I think the place to deal with it is dealing with it at the feet of Jesus, somebody who unconditionally accepts you, somebody who's trustworthy and real, and somebody who deeply understands you. Thank you.